I shouldn't be touching him. My fingers wrapped around the Mafia boss's wrist as 22 doctors stared in horror. Pyo Jian-woo lay unconscious, shirtless, dying. The most dangerous man in Korea. And I was the only one holding on. Step away from him. Now. 6 guns clicked behind me. I gripped his wrist tighter. If you believe everyone deserves a second chance at life, no matter who they are, hit that subscribe button for Ebony and Pearl stories right now. Because what happens next will blow your mind. The white cloth trembled in Nora Westfield's hand. 22 doctors stood frozen in a crescent around the dying man, their white coats wrinkled, their faces etched with exhaustion and defeat. Behind them, 6 bodyguards held guns steady, barrels trained on the space between her shoulders. No trembling. No mercy. Just cold metal and colder stares. Step back from the bed. The order came from Jian-woo's right-hand man, the one whose voice cut like wire through bone. Now. But Nora couldn't step back. Not from the man lying shirtless on the hospital bed before her, his tattooed chest rising and falling in shallow, failing breaths. Not from Pyo Jian-woo, the untouchable Mafia boss, the ghost of South Korea's underworld, the man whose name was spoken only in whispers behind closed doors, the man who was dying. The sharp, sterile smell of disinfectant mixed with something acrid. Panic sweat from doctors who'd exhausted every protocol and found nothing. A heart monitor beeped somewhere to her left, each tone slower than the last. A countdown. The linoleum floor felt slick beneath her shoes, but her fingers clutched the cloth so tightly her knuckles ached. The head neurosurgeon, a man with silver hair and trembling hands, turned to Jian-woo's lieutenant with resignation carved into every line of his face. "There's nothing more we can do," he said, voice hollow. His brain activity is, he's minutes from complete shutdown. The lieutenant's jaw clenched. His gun shifted, no longer pointed at the doctors, but directly at Nora's spine. "Then she tries," he said coldly. "Because if he dies, she dies." Nora's breath caught in her throat. 3 months ago, I didn't even know this man existed, she thought, her internal voice strangely steady despite the terror clawing up her spine. Now I'm about to touch him in a way that could kill us both. Her mind flashed to Jamaica, to the mentor who died because of this technique, to the hospital review board that had destroyed her career, to the vow she'd made never to use forbidden methods again, to the reason she'd fled across oceans to this cold, beautiful prison of a country. "I'm sorry, Dr. Chen. If this goes wrong, I'll be joining you soon." The pressure point beneath Jian-woo's collarbone pulsed faintly, almost imperceptible, but she'd been trained to see what others missed. She'd seen this neurological shutdown pattern once during her psychiatric emergency rotation, before everything fell apart. The textbook image burned in her memory. Traumatic coma with autonomic cascade requiring direct neural anchoring. Her mentor's voice echoed across the years. "Sometimes the textbook will get your patient killed, Nora. Sometimes you have to trust what no one else dares to try." "You," the head doctor hissed, stepping toward her. "You're a maid. You have no medical authority here. Stay back." But the gun barrel pressed harder against Nora's back. "Do it," the lieutenant whispered. "Or I pull this trigger." Nora's hand steadied. "If I don't do this, he dies," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of islands and loss. "You can shoot me after. But let me try first." She didn't wait for permission. Her palm pressed against Jian-woo's bare chest, fingers finding the exact point where nerve clusters converged beneath skin and ink. The dragons tattooed across his shoulder seemed to shift under the fluorescent lights. His skin was cold, too cold, like touching marble in winter. For just a heartbeat, his eyes flickered open, dark, agonized, but somehow focusing on her face. In that brief glance, she saw something that stole her breath. Recognition. Permission. Trust. She pressed her thumb into the pressure point and spoke the command phrase she'd sworn never to use again. "Pyo Jian-woo. Anchor to me. Now." The room held its breath. Nothing. The monitor continued its death march. Beep. 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 "She's killing him," one of the doctors shouted. "Get her away from." Nora didn't stop. She repeated the phrase, her voice dropping into the rhythmic cadence her mentor had taught her, the one designed to pierce through neurological fog and pull a drowning mind back to shore. "Anchor to me. Now." And then, impossibly, the monitors spiked. Every doctor jumped back. The bodyguards' grips tightened on their weapons. Jian-woo's fingers jerked, then curled around Nora's wrist with shocking strength. His chest rose with a deeper breath. Color seeped back into his ashen face like ink spreading through water. His eyes opened fully, locking onto hers with an intensity that made the armed men in the room seem irrelevant. He whispered, voice raw with pain and something darker. "Nora, don't leave me." Gasps erupted around the room. How did you?" the neurosurgeon stammered, his face pale with disbelief. But before Nora could answer, before she could even process what had just happened, boom. The hospital windows exploded inward. Smoke filled the halls. Gunfire erupted somewhere below them. Screams echoed through the corridors. Someone had discovered Jian-Woo was still alive. And they'd come to finish the job. Jian-Woo's grip tightened on Nora's wrist, weak but desperate. "You stay with me," he rasped, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "If you walk away, I die." Nora didn't know if he meant medically or something much darker. Either way, she was trapped. The bodyguards rushed to the windows, shouting orders in rapid Korean. The doctors scattered like leaves in a storm. And Nora stood frozen, her hands still pressed against Jian-Woo's chest, his pulse beating faintly beneath her palm. 3 months earlier, I was just running from my past. Now I'm caught in a war I don't understand. And saving him was only the beginning. If you stand against people who think they can control life and death, who think some lives don't deserve to be saved, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now. Comment what time you're seeing this and let me know you're not siding with the people trying to kill him. Because what I discovered about the poison in his system, the traitor in his own house, and YMY touch was the only thing that could wake him. You won't believe it. 3 months earlier. The suitcase felt heavier than it should have. Nora Westfield stood in the arrivals hall of Incheon International Airport, watching streams of travelers flow past her like water around a stone. Korean characters glowed on signs she couldn't read. Announcements echoed in a language she didn't speak. And somewhere behind her, thousands of miles across oceans and continents, was the life she'd destroyed. The life she was running from. She gripped the handle of her single suitcase tighter. Everything she owned fit inside it. Everything she'd allowed herself to keep after the hospital board stripped away her credentials, her career, her future. Everything except the white cloth folded carefully in her jacket pocket. The last piece of Dr. Chen, the mentor who'd believed in her until the very end. Until Nora's forbidden technique had killed her. Don't think about it. Don't think about her face. Don't think about the flat line. Nora forced herself to move toward the exit, toward the employment agency representative holding a sign with her name misspelled, Nora Westfield. Close enough. Miss Westfield. The woman's English was crisp, professional. Welcome to Korea. We have a car waiting. Nora nodded, unable to trust her voice. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. The position is still available. Live-in domestic work. Very good pay. No references required. That should have been the first warning. No one offered that kind of money without asking questions unless they had something to hide. But Nora was desperate. Desperate for anonymity. Desperate for distance from everything medical. Everything that reminded her of who she used to be. So she signed the contract in the back of a black sedan without reading the fine print. And sealed her fate. The mansion rose from the Busan hills like a fortress. High walls. Security cameras. Gates that opened silently, swallowing the car whole before closing behind them with the finality of a tomb sealing shut. Nora's stomach twisted. What have I gotten myself into? The head housekeeper, a woman named Mrs. Yoon with steel gray hair and eyes like frozen lakes, met her at the servants' entrance. You follow rules, you survive, Mrs. Yoon said in broken English, her tone making it clear this wasn't negotiable. Rule 1. No East Wing. Ever. Rule 2. No speaking unless spoken to. Rule 3. Never touch the boss. Rule 4. No questions. Who is the boss? Nora asked quietly. Mrs. Yoon's expression hardened. You already broke Rule 4. Nora learned quickly that invisibility was survival. She cleaned in silence. Moved through hallways like a ghost. Kept her eyes down, her hands busy, her mind carefully, meticulously numb. The white cloth stayed in her uniform pocket, a constant weight against her hip. Some nights she'd take it out, run her fingers over the fabric, and remember Dr. Chen's voice. You have a gift, Nora. Don't let fear make you waste it. But fear had already won. Fear had driven her across the world. Fear kept her scrubbing floors in a mansion that felt more like a prison with every passing day. She didn't ask about the men in dark suits who came and went at odd hours. Didn't question the hushed, urgent conversations in Korean that stopped the moment she entered a room. Didn't wonder why every window had bulletproof glass or why armed guards patrolled the grounds at night. She just cleaned. And tried to forget. Until the night she met him. It was 2:14 a.m. when Nora heard footsteps echoing from the gym. She'd been sanitizing the marble hallway outside, her movements automatic, her mind carefully blank. But when the gym doors opened, instinct made her look up. And freeze. Pyo Jian-woo stepped into the hallway, shirtless, sweat glistening over the intricate tattoos winding across his chest and shoulders. Dragons coiled around his ribs. Korean characters she couldn't read marked his collarbone. His dark eyes locked onto hers with a focus that made her entire body stiffen. "You're new," he said. His voice was quiet but carried weight, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to command a room. "Yes, sir." Nora's voice came out barely above a whisper. He studied her face with unsettling precision, like he was memorizing every detail, every fear. "What's your name?" "And Nora Westfield." "Westfield," he repeated, testing the syllables. "Where are you from?" She hesitated. How much truth was safe? "Somewhere far from here." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Good. Far is safer." He walked past her, his presence lingering like heat from a flame even after he disappeared around the corner. Nora stood frozen, heart hammering against her ribs. What did he mean by that? Over the following weeks, Nora noticed things she wished she hadn't. The way Jian-woo's hand would tremble slightly when he reached for his coffee. How he'd pause mid-sentence sometimes, eyes unfocused, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. The brief flashes of disorientation that crossed his face before he'd shake them off and continue as if nothing had happened. She recognized those symptoms. She'd seen them before. In Dr. Chen's final patient, the one whose case had ended in tragedy and stripped Nora of everything. Neurological degradation. Autonomic instability. The kind of thing that started small and ended catastrophically. No. I'm not doing this again. But every time she saw Jian-woo zone out for half a second too long, every time his fingers twitched involuntarily around a glass, her medical training screamed at her to say something. To help. To save him before it was too late. I had seen those symptoms before. And I had sworn never to face them again. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. If you believe people shouldn't have to run from their past forever, that everyone deserves a second chance, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories and comment, "Second chances matter." Because what happens when Nora's past and Jian-woo's present collide? It's about to get dangerous. The symptoms got worse. Nora watched from the shadows as Jian-woo's episodes became harder to hide. His hand would shake violently during meetings, forcing him to clench his fist beneath the table. His voice would sharpen mid-sentence, words turning cold and cutting for no reason. Men who'd served him for years began walking on eggshells, uncertain which version of their boss they'd encounter. He was unraveling. And Nora kept her distance. Not my problem. Not my responsibility. I left that life behind. She scrubbed floors harder. Avoided the East Wing entirely. Kept her head down and her mouth shut. But her hands trembled every time she saw him grip a doorframe for balance. Every time his eyes went distant and unfocused. I can't save him. I can't save anyone. I already proved that. The crash came on a Thursday night. Nora was in the laundry room, folding linens with mechanical precision, when she heard it, a thunderous sound from the East Wing that made the walls shudder. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. She dropped the sheets and ran. Rule 1. No East Wing. Her feet carried her through the forbidden corridor anyway. Rule 2. No speaking. Hello? Is someone? Rule 3. Never touch the boss. She burst through the office doors and froze. Pyo Jian-woo lay convulsing on the marble floor, his body locked in violent seizures that looked like electrical surges tearing through him. His eyes had rolled back, showing only whites. His tattoos, those intricate dragons and characters, seemed to darken against his skin like bruised ink spreading through water. Foam gathered at the corner of his mouth. No. Nora dropped to her knees beside him, instinct overriding every rule, every vow she'd made to stay uninvolved. Her hands hovered over him, medical training screaming at her to stabilize his airway, protect his head, time the seizure. The office doors exploded open. 6 armed men stormed in, shouting in rapid Korean. Hands grabbed Nora roughly, yanking her away from Jian-woo's convulsing body. I just heard. Someone slammed her against the wall hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Doctors rushed past her in a blur of white coats and urgent voices. They surrounded Jian-woo, shouting orders, administering injections, checking vitals with instruments that beeped frantically. Mrs. Yoon appeared in the doorway, her face pale with fury. "You broke the rules," she hissed. "All of them." Nora was dragged from the room as the medical team worked. Her last glimpse of Jian-woo showed his body finally stilling, but his chest rising and falling too shallowly, too weakly. For 2 days, he didn't wake. Nora was confined to the servants' quarters, a guard stationed outside her door. Through whispered conversations between other staff members, she pieced together fragments of information. The doctors had tried everything. Neurological scans, toxicology screens, experimental treatments flown in from Switzerland. Nothing worked. Jian-woo remained unconscious, his condition deteriorating with each passing hour. And the men grew suspicious. On the third morning, the lieutenant, the one with the wire-thin voice and eyes like frozen steel, came for her. He slammed her against the corridor wall with enough force to make her vision blur. "You!" he snarled, his face inches from hers. "You were the last one who saw him before he fell. I just heard the crash. I was trying to help. Or you were finishing what you started." His grip tightened on her throat. "What did you give him? What poison?" "Nothing. I swear I didn't. Don't lie to me." His gun pressed cold against her temple. "We found traces of an unknown compound in his system. Something the doctors can't identify. You're new. No background. No references. Convenient timing." Nora's breath came in ragged gasps. "I didn't poison him. I would never." Then explain how a maid knew to run to him before anyone else heard the crash. She couldn't. Not without revealing the truth she'd buried. Not without admitting she'd recognized the symptoms weeks ago. That her medical training, the training she'd fled from, had been screaming warnings she'd ignored. The lieutenant's eyes narrowed. "You know something. I can see it on your face." "I don't." "If you're lying, if you know anything that could save him and you're keeping quiet." His voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "We'll bury you so deep, no one will ever find you." The flashback hit her like a physical blow. Kingston University Hospital. 3 years ago. Nora standing over a patient in similar condition. Seizures, neurological collapse, doctors scrambling and failing. Her mentor, Dr. Chen, gripping her shoulder. "You have the knowledge to try something radical. Something they won't approve. But it might be his only chance." The hospital review board's faces, cold with judgment. "Your unauthorized procedure resulted in the patient's death and your mentor's resignation. You are hereby stripped of all medical credentials." Dr. Chen's final words before the cancer took her. "Don't let fear stop you from using your gift, Nora. The technique wasn't wrong. The timing was. Promise me you'll try again if someone needs it." But Nora had run instead. Run from the guilt, the accusations, the memory of flatlining monitors. Now, pressed against the wall with a gun to her head, Nora realized the terrible truth. The doctors couldn't save Jian-woo. Whatever was shutting down his brain, it was beyond conventional medicine. And she might be the only person alive who knew a technique risky enough, dangerous enough, to pull him back. The same technique that had killed her last patient. Her voice cracked. "I might know something. But it's not. It's not approved. It's experimental. And it might kill him." The lieutenant's expression didn't change. "He's dying anyway. What do you need? Time. And..." She swallowed hard. "You have to let me try. Even if the doctors say no." They dragged her to the hospital where Jian-woo had been transferred. As the black sedan sped through Busan's streets, the lieutenant's final words echoed in her ears. "If he dies, we bury you beside him. If you're lying about being able to help." He pressed the gun harder against her ribs. "You'll wish we'd buried you." Nora clutched the white cloth in her pocket. Dr. Chen's voice whispering across the years. "Promise me you'll try again." She'd run from this moment for 3 years. But fate had caught up to her anyway. Subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories if you believe people deserve to know the truth, even when powerful people want to bury it. Comment, "Truth matters," if you're not siding with the lieutenant and his threats. Because what Nora's about to reveal will change everything. The hospital room smelled like failure. 22 doctors stood in a defeated semicircle around the bed, their expensive credentials rendered useless by the dying man before them. Machines beeped in discordant rhythms. 4 lines snaked into Pyo Jian-woo's arms, pumping fluids that did nothing to stop the shutdown spreading through his brain. He lay shirtless, unconscious, his tattooed chest rising and falling with breaths too shallow to sustain life much longer. Nora was shoved through the door, the lieutenant's gun pressed against her spine. "This is your moment," he said coldly. "Use it wisely." The head neurosurgeon, a man with silver hair and decades of experience etched into his face, looked up with barely concealed disgust. "You brought a maid?" He gestured dismissively at Nora. "This is a medical crisis, not." "She says she can help," the lieutenant interrupted. Laughter rippled through several doctors. One, a younger physician with sharp features, stepped forward. "She's a domestic worker. What could she possibly know that we don't?" Nora's fingers tightened around the white cloth in her pocket. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to refuse, to let these credentialed experts handle it and wash her hands of the responsibility. But Jianwu's monitor was flatlining in slow motion. And she'd made a promise to Dr. Chen. "Let me through," Nora said quietly. The silver-haired doctor blocked her path. "Absolutely not. You'll contaminate the—" The lieutenant's gun clicked. "Move." The doctors parted reluctantly. Nora approached the bed on trembling legs, her mind fragmenting into 1,000 terrible memories. The last patient. The one who'd seized just like Jianwu. The one Dr. Chen had begged her to try the forbidden technique on. "It's radical, Nora, but his brain is shutting down. This is his only chance." The pressure point beneath the collarbone. The anchor command. The way the patient's body had responded for 30 beautiful seconds before. Flatline. The board's accusations. Unauthorized. Dangerous. Negligent. Dr. Chen's devastated face. "It wasn't your fault. The timing was wrong, but the method. I killed him." "No. The disease killed him. You tried to save him." Now, standing over Jianwu's unconscious body, Nora felt the weight of that failure crushing her chest. "I can't do this again. I can't watch another person die because of me." But the lieutenant's voice cut through her panic. "If he dies, you die." Her hand moved to Jianwu's chest. The doctors erupted in protest. "Stop her. She has no training, no authorization. She'll kill him." But Nora's fingers found the pressure point beneath his collarbone, the exact spot where neurological pathways converged, where deep memory responses could be triggered if you knew precisely how much pressure to apply. She pressed down and whispered the words Dr. Chen had taught her. "Pyo Jianwu. Anchor to me. Now." Nothing. The monitors continued their death march. Sweat dripped down Nora's temple. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. "Please. Please work this time." She pressed harder, her voice dropping into the rhythmic cadence designed to pierce comatose minds. "Anchor to me. Hear my voice. Follow it back. Now." The monitors spiked violently. Every doctor in the room jumped back. Jianwu's fingers twitched, once, twice, then curled around Nora's wrist with shocking strength. His chest expanded with a deep, shuddering breath. Color flooded back into his face like sunrise breaking over gray water. The darkness beneath his skin, that bruised, poisoned look, began to fade. His eyelids tore open. Dark eyes, glazed with pain but fully conscious, locked onto Nora's face with laser focus. And he whispered, voice hoarse and raw, "Nora, don't leave me." The room fell into stunned silence. "Impossible," the silver-haired doctor breathed. His brain activity was. "How did she?" The younger physician stared at Nora like she performed a magic trick. What was that? But Nora couldn't answer. Couldn't speak. Couldn't process the fact that it had worked, that Jianwu was awake, alive, gripping her wrist like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. His eyes never left hers. Not when the doctors swarmed around him with instruments and urgent questions. Not when his men exhaled in collective relief. Only her. Like she'd pulled him from drowning and he was terrified she'd let go. "How did you know?" he rasped, his voice barely audible. "How did you bring me back?" Before Nora could answer, boom. The hospital windows exploded inward in a spray of glass and smoke. Screams erupted. Alarms shrieked. Gunfire rattled through the corridors below, echoing up the stairwells like thunder. The bodyguards rushed to the windows, weapons drawn, shouting into radios. "We're under attack." "How many?" East stairwell breached. Multiple hostiles. Jianwu's grip on Nora's wrist tightened despite his weakened state. His eyes, still foggy with pain, sharpened with lethal clarity. "Don't move," he commanded her, his voice gaining strength. Stay close. What's happening? Someone knew I was still alive. His jaw clenched. And they came to finish the job. Smoke poured under the door. Bullets punched through walls. The doctors scattered, diving behind equipment and scrambling for exits. The lieutenant barked orders, positioning men at the door. But Jianwu only looked at Nora, his hand locked around her wrist like iron. If you walk away, he whispered, his voice carrying a weight that had nothing to do with medicine, I die. Nora didn't know if he meant she was the only one who could keep him stable, or if he meant something far more dangerous. Either way, she was trapped. The door burst open. Men in black tactical gear stormed in, faces covered, weapons raised. And Nora realized with sickening clarity that saving Pyo Jianwu's life had painted a target on her own back. If you can't stand people who attack the innocent and defenseless, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories and comment, protect the innocent. Because the people behind this attack? They're about to make Nora wish she'd never touched him. Chaos erupted like a war zone. Move the bed. Now. The lieutenant's voice cut through the gunfire and screams. 4 of Jianwu's men rushed to unlock the bed's wheels while the others formed a protective barrier at the door, returning fire at the masked attackers. Bullets punched through medical equipment. Glass shattered. The acrid smell of gunpowder mixed with smoke. Nora's hands flew to Jianwu's 4 lines, steadying them as the bed jerked into motion. Keep him stable, one of the doctors shouted, running alongside them. If those lines disconnect. I know. Nora's training took over, her fingers working automatically to secure the tubes even as her heart hammered against her ribs. The attackers moved with terrifying precision, not random thugs, but trained operatives who knew exactly where to position themselves, exactly which exits to block. Someone had given them the hospital layout. Someone had told them which floor Jianwu was on. Someone had planned this down to the second. They crashed through the service corridor, the bed rattling over uneven floors. Jianwu's eyes fluttered, his lips moving in barely audible whispers. Inside. Someone inside. What's he saying? The lieutenant leaned closer. Jianwu's hand shot out weakly, gripping Nora's sleeve. Jae-sung. Watching. Always watching. Who's Jae-sung? Nora asked desperately. But Jianwu's eyes rolled back, his body going rigid. The monitor shrieked. He's crashing. The doctor's face went pale. His heart rate. No, no, no. Nora abandoned the 4 lines and placed both hands on Jianwu's chest, finding the pressure point even as the bed bounced through the corridor. Not now. You don't get to die now. Gunfire exploded behind them. Someone screamed. But Nora blocked it all out, her world narrowing to the man dying beneath her hands. Pyo Jianwu. Anchor to me. Now. She pressed harder than before, her voice commanding, furious. You said if I walk away you die. Well, I'm right here. So you don't get to leave. Do you hear me? Anchor to me. His body convulsed once. Then his hand locked around her wrist again. His eyes opened, clearer this time, focusing on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Nora, he rasped. I'm here. Stay with me. They burst through an emergency exit into an underground parking garage where 3 armored vehicles waited, engines running. The evidence came together during the evacuation. They knew which elevator we'd use, one of the bodyguards reported grimly as they loaded Jianwu into the first vehicle. They were waiting at every secondary exit. The lieutenant's jaw clenched. Check everyone's phones. Someone sent our location. Already did. Another guard held up a device, his face dark with fury. Signal trace shows outgoing messages from inside our security detail. Sent 20 minutes before the attack. The lieutenant's eyes went cold. Who? Still tracking. But whoever it is. The guard's voice dropped. They've been feeding information for weeks. Maybe months. They knew about the maid. His gaze flicked to Nora. They knew she was with him when he woke up. Nora's blood turned to ice. Someone had been watching her. Reporting on her. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Jianwu's cryptic whispers suddenly made horrifying sense. Someone inside. Always watching. There was a traitor in his organization. And they tried to finish what the poison had started. The safe house was a fortified apartment in a high-rise on the opposite end of Busan. Clean lines, bulletproof windows, enough security to protect a head of state. Doctors worked quickly to stabilize Jianwu in the master bedroom converted into a makeshift ICU. Nora hovered nearby, unable to leave even when Mrs. Yoon tried to pull her away. "You need rest," the housekeeper said, her earlier coldness replaced with something almost like respect. "I need to make sure he's alive," Nora shot back. An hour later, Ji-woo's eyes opened fully. The doctors stepped back, their expressions a mixture of awe and unease. His vitals had stabilized impossibly fast. Faster than any medical protocol could explain. Ji-woo's gaze swept the room, cataloging faces, exits, threats. Then landed on Nora. "You," he said, his voice still rough but gaining strength. "Come here." Nora approached slowly. The doctors parted for her now, no longer dismissive but wary, like she'd become something they couldn't categorize or control. Ji-woo's hand reached out, fingers wrapping around hers with surprising firmness. "She stays close," he told the lieutenant without taking his eyes off Nora. "Within arm's reach. Always. Boss, we don't know if she's the only one I trust." Ji-woo's tone left no room for argument. "The only one who couldn't have betrayed me. She didn't even know who I was 3 months ago." The lieutenant's expression tightened, but he nodded. Ji-woo's thumb traced across Nora's knuckles, a gesture that felt far too intimate for someone she barely knew. "You brought me back," he said quietly. "Twice." "Why?" Nora swallowed hard. "Because you were dying. And I couldn't just watch. Even though it scared you. It wasn't a question." His dark eyes saw too much. "Even though you've done this before and it went wrong." Her breath caught. "How did you?" "You hesitated. You were terrified. But you did it anyway." His grip tightened. "That's not something a stranger does for a dying criminal." "I'm not," Nora's voice cracked. "I'm just trying to survive. Then survive here. With me." His voice dropped lower, edged with something dangerous and protective. "Because whoever tried to kill me knows about you now. And they won't stop until we're both dead." The message arrived at 3 a.m. The lieutenant burst into the room, tablet in hand, his face ashen. "Boss, you need to see this." The screen showed a single text message sent from an encrypted number. "You woke the wrong man. Next time we kill the girl first." The room fell silent. Nora's knees went weak. "They're coming for me." But Ji-woo's expression didn't change. Didn't show fear or surprise. Only cold, lethal calculation. His eyes shifted to Nora, and in them she saw a promise that was both terrifying and strangely comforting. "No one touches her," he said quietly. "Double the security. I want eyes on every entrance, every window. And find the traitor." His voice went arctic. "I don't care what it takes." The lieutenant nodded and left. Ji-woo pulled Nora closer, his hand never releasing hers. "I won't let them hurt you," he said. "You saved my life. Now I'm going to make sure you survive yours." Nora wanted to pull away, to insist she didn't need protection, to maintain some illusion of independence. But standing in that room, with armed men patrolling outside and a death threat hanging over her head, she realized the truth. She could never return to her old life. Never go back to being invisible, to scrubbing floors and keeping her head down. Saving Pyo Ji-woo had dragged her into a world of violence and betrayal. A world where love could be deadlier than poison and trust was the rarest currency. She'd woken the sleeping dragon. And now she'd have to survive the fire. Saving him was just the beginning. And now the real danger begins. If you believe no one should be hunted for doing the right thing, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories and comment, "Protect the innocent." Drop what country you're watching from, because this story is about to get dangerous, and you won't want to miss what happens when Nora and Ji-woo face the traitor together.